Okay, so over here we see we have our hose reel, and so on the hose reel right here is where the line coming from the pump itself goes directly into the reel itself. Underneath all of this hose that's wound up on this reel is a connection that is basically fed through the reel and into this hose. And then at the very end of our hose we have our lawn gun, and we also have another quick connect coupler right here. So with the hose reel, this is just basically the way that we are going to apply the product that the pump is giving us, simply by pulling the trigger and the product will come out. If you have any issues with this trigger, you can see right now the trigger is in the closed position, and if there was any product still flowing out while the gun is closed, that means the inner working of this gun is probably compromised. There's a lot of I'll turn this over here. There's a lot of seals inside this assembly, and just over time they get degraded and worn out. You can actually take a small Phillips screwdriver and take these 4 screws out and pull this off, and it exposes that entire basically assembly, and you can replace that. If for whatever reason the gun's too damaged and you can't replace this, you can also just replace the gun itself. The next part of maintenance, and this is really, I want to key on this one, is our quick connect. So the brass quick connects are very key. One of the big things that they do that a lot of people don't realize that's very important is, as you are walking back and forth in a yard, you can get this hose twisted up and it'll start to loop like this, which if you pull tightly enough on a loop, you'll kink the hose and it'll stop spraying. Pretty common. What the quick connect allows you to do is, the gun is still sealed, but the gun can spin freely inside of this quick connect, so you don't get those loops as you're walking back and forth and kinking your hose. So it helps keep your hose straight. The other nice thing about it is, if for whatever reason this gun were to fail and we need to replace it, you just would simply pull back on the collar. Sometimes you need to push the gun in as well, and you pull back on the collar and the gun comes out. And so you can then just reattach a new gun directly in there, and we're ready to go. So one of the key things that I highly recommend is, at least once a week, these quick connects can corrode, they can seize up, and then this collar will not slide open anymore. And so what I highly recommend is to make sure that, I don't know if we can see inside of there, I recommend that we spray some lubricant like a WD-40 or a PB Blaster, either one works good, at least once a week in here, to help stave off corrosion, to help stop this from seizing. This collar should be able to be compressed very easily at all times, and it should be able to spin easily at all times. If it doesn't, it will damage it. The other thing about this, what's nice about these particular models of quick connects that we use, is that they are completely rebuildable. So the seal that you saw down in there, you can pull this quick connect apart and replace the seal that's inside there, rather than having to spend a whole nother $70 or so for this entire piece of brass. They are not cheap. So that's pretty much the gun and maintenance of the gun. Don't skip this step. Once a week, put some WD-40 or something on this. Keep it from corroding, keep it from locking up. It'll make your life much easier. The other things that you want to keep an eye on is, if we can rotate around over here to this side, your chain on your reel, make sure it's snug, make sure it's not loose or hanging down too much. If this jumps off, then you're going to have a hard time getting the hose to reel in, as well as you want to do your best to make sure that any kind of your gloves or anything like that, you don't have it to where it can get caught up in here. So I probably wouldn't recommend leaving that right there, but just be mindful of that and make sure your chain doesn't jump off. And then from there, that's pretty much the main components. You do have a couple of you do have a grease, what we call a grease zert right here, where you can hook a grease gun up to this. That should only be done probably every time the pump needs the oil change. So during spray rounds, it's probably at the very beginning of a spray round, and at the end of a spray round, where we're using this rig every single day to blanket spray the entire property. So it's usually based on hours and the amount of wear, but if you're using this every single day, I would say after about 5-6 weeks of doing that, you probably need to put a grease gun on here and try to put some grease in here. You'll know if the grease is going into that fitting properly, because you'll have some of it spill out right here, which is normal. Once you start to see some of that grease coming out, then you know you have enough packed in there, and it's good to go. Once again, general rule for this is put grease in this whenever you're having to change the oil. They roughly have about the same amount of life as the oil.